Sheriff Richard Mack has been at this a long time, and we owe him a great debt of gratitude for his work and for coming on his own nickel all the way from Texas to lend aid in saving our republic and the rule of law. He came to Westminster a few years ago, and with his help we stopped an attempt for an unconstitutional county police force in Carroll County. An elected office would diminish the sheriff. And to his credit, Sheriff Ken Dragoning has built our Carroll County Sheriff's Department into a magnificent job and a magnificent full-service sheriff's office. Thank you so much, Sheriff. I have this old book of Sheriff Mack's here. He also has a great little book, the title's wonderful, America's Last Hope, the County Sheriff. But to introduce him, I just wanted to read from the back of this little booklet, To Serve and Protect. This time-honored mission statement of American law enforcement is steadily giving way in police departments all across the nation to an ethos of intimidation, military-style siege, and disdain for citizens' rights. Richard Mack, the man who, as sheriff of a rural Arizona county, fought the Brady gun control bill all the way to the Supreme Court and won, gives us an insider's glimpse into the pervasive forces that are relentlessly driving America towards a police state. Sheriff Mack is just like the other two speakers here tonight and are the type of statesman that we need to elect into office. The one and only Sheriff Richard Mack.
The last guy was kind of short. Are these okay? Can you hear me? Why you have short sheriffs? See, this South sheriff's supposed to be tall and lean. Sheriff Jenkins, that's all right. That's all right. Hey, I am really glad to be back. I love Maryland. I love freedom. It's kind of funny that we're here battling for freedom in an issue facing Delaware, the first state in our new union, it's really amazing, isn't it? Massachusetts, Delaware, Maryland, all these liberal states that should be looking at their history and our foundation and seeing what they were at the beginning. And I guess the old adage from Ben Franklin, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat its mistakes. You know, and we certainly are today. And I brought this jacket all the way from Texas, so I wore it up here, but I don't think I'm going to keep it on very long. Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah. So,
we still respect.
I really wanted to have the other sheriffs that were here to speak, and I think what I'm going to do, if we have any time left for this panel, is I'm going to have the other sheriffs, like Sheriff Jenkins, have them come up and talk. You know, this is their territory. Sheriff Mueller also. I want to hear from Sheriff Dragoni, all of you. You guys come up here. You know, I'm not a sheriff anymore. And just to also to set the record straight, I did run for Congress in Texas. The primary was May 29th, and I lost. So I will tell you what, I ran against a guy that was probably one of the most, well, he's been named one of the top 10 most powerful congressmen in the United States. His name was Lamar Smith. He is chairman of the House Judiciary. He's been there 24 years. And I'll tell you what, he's done a wonderful job. He voted for the Patriot Act, for NAFTA, for TARP, for all the bailouts, and to NDAA. He voted for it, quote, happily. And so, you know, why would you vote for somebody like me that would never voted for that, any of that? And why would you vote for somebody who would never raise the national debt? And why would you vote for somebody who would say no more extravagant pensions for politicians in Washington, D.C.? So, I just don't fit into that place. I would say this to the Texans who voted against me. Thank you for not sending me to that cesspool of corruption. My God. Yeah. So, anyway, it's an honor to share the stage with those who have stood here. It's an honor to be with Sheriff Christopher again. I want to make sure you know the tools I brought with me, okay? First of all and foremost, there's not one of you who should think that this was written for sheriffs or sheriffs only. The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, needs to be read by every American. Period. Every American. Now, I hope every sheriff reads it, and I sent one of these to every sheriff in the country. Okay? So that was 3,100 of these, okay? There's only been about 110,000 of these go across America. And the Tea Party groups and the 9/12 groups and the Freedom groups and the Land Rights group, whatever suits your fancy of any of those groups, you should have this. You should be passing this around. And yeah, every now and again it costs a little bit. I'll tell you right now, if you can't afford this book, I'll give you one. Okay? If you can't afford it, then go ahead and donate whatever you can. But if you can't afford it, I'll give it to you. It's that important that you read this book. Okay? Same thing goes for the sheriff. The only one who really couldn't afford it would be Sheriff Christopher, because he only makes about $20,000 a year. And what you do to get rid of a sheriff is you keep lowering his salary until he finally tells you, I can't afford to stay here anymore. And that's what they're doing. Okay? And so that's a national shame. I started a group called the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officer Association, the CSPOA. And we just had a convention January 30th. And Sheriff Mueller from Pennsylvania was there, and Sheriff Christopher was there, and I know there were other sheriffs who wanted to attend, and we're going to have an opportunity for them to do that. Right now we're planning another one September 17th, but I'm going to tell you right now, we might be postponing that. Because the most important issue facing our country today is in Sussex County, Delaware. And we're going to be concentrating and focusing our efforts there. Because if Sheriff Christopher goes down, that will be a failure for us all. That will be a failure for CSPOA. That will be a failure for the Maryland sheriffs. That will be a failure for all sheriffs everywhere, and it will be a huge failure for we the people. And so we're focusing now on helping Sheriff Christopher with this most pressing freedom issue in our country. And that's why I came out from Texas. And George was way off. This cost me a little bit more than a nickel. All right. So back at the table, we have a highlighted version of our CSPOA convention. We call it the Miracle in Las Vegas. And it was a miracle, and miracles still can happen there. And it was absolutely astonishing. And every one of you should also get one of these. Okay? So both very good tools that you should have here. Okay? And our last speaker of the last day was Sheriff Joe Arpaio from Phoenix. And we can all sing happy birthday to him because he turns 80 next week. 80. Yeah, that's another thing we're trying to stop. Okay, now, each of you, did you get one of these? Everybody have one of these in your hand? Okay, you need to have one of these in your hand. If you already had one, just pass it on to somebody else or turn it back in or whatever, but you can have this, okay? You can have that. And to be quite honest with you, these cost money too. But I want you to have this, okay? And we're going to go over this in just a minute, okay? One other thing on my table is I just released a new book. When I was last here in Westminster, I did not have this book. It just came out just in time for our sheriff convention in Vegas, The Magic of Gun Control. I just love that. And I invented a new word for this book. Polymagician. Ah, you're already catching that, huh? Because you know why? Because the polymagicians of Washington, D.C. want you to believe that there's magic in all the stupid things they do, especially gun control. It's magic. Oh yeah, it's never worked anywhere else throughout world history. But it'll work now because this is America. And we're polymagicians. We're politicians that are magicians. Polymagicians. We'll make it work because we're illusionists. We'll make you believe it. And we have a scantily cladded assistant called the media. And they will convince you that we're magic. And that's why you'll think there's magic in gun control. Okay? Great book. Now let's get serious. I'm going to tell you plain and simply, what Sheriff Christopher was saying up here was absolutely vital to you, to our nation, and to the well-being of our constitutional republic. Why is there such a movement in America, especially in the liberal eastern states, liberal eastern states? Why is there a movement to destroy the office of sheriff and to remove the sheriff? Why does that exist? Because you have to know and understand that polymagicians want cops to follow orders. They want to control them. They want them to do what they're told. They want Nuremberg officers. Do what you are told. The sheriff is the only elected law enforcement officer in the entire country and the only one in your county. Get rid of him and your constitutional republic in your county starts dying at that moment. And you have to go to the polymagicians and say, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Please take care of us. Let me kiss your ring. Please let me bow down to you, because that is what your only recourse will be. When you lose the sheriff, who is your only elected law enforcement officer, who answers only and to, by, for, and of the people, do you want to stop that? You got to ask yourself a question. Why do they? They're not trying to destroy a chief of police. They're not trying to destroy a police department. They're not trying to destroy highway patrolmen or state troopers. They want more of them because they're revenue agents and they know it and they follow orders. And the sheriff is the only individual in government that you have in your county and in your state that works by, for, and of the people, directly reports to you. He doesn't report. On the back of this book, Joe Arpaio says, he is not a bureaucrat. He does not answer to one. He answers to his boss, the citizens. Okay? The sheriff is the only employee of the people and exists to serve and protect them in all matters. And yes, he is a traffic director. He directs traffic. When the federal government is speeding or committing some other crime, he goes like this. You stop it right there. You're not going to do that in my county. He wants to get along with them, of course. And most of the time he will. But he has to draw the lines and he has to direct the traffic. You can come, no good, stop right there. I'm sorry, you're not going to do that. Now we're going to get into that a little bit too, and the principle involved with that, of directing traffic, okay? It's called, directing traffic is actually called keeping my oath of office. That's what it's all about. Now, I was so amused, it was a year ago that I saw this particular Time magazine. Now, I'm not a fan of Time magazine. But I saw this, and several times in my career and in my life, I've seen a Time magazine that just said, I gotta have that one. Now this particular article and issue was really saturated with some humdinger stuff, because the managing editor of Time magazine, Richard Stengel, wrote this stuff. And he says on the very front, it's the Constitution. He's starting to shred it right here, okay? And he's asking the question on the front cover, does it still matter? Well, what do you think he said? He's going to answer it for you, okay? Oh, yeah. Yeah, boy. Time magazine, does he think it still matters? Well, he finished. He shredded the whole thing now. There's the Constitution right there. It's shredded. And I was wondering if he was kind of sad that on the 4th of July issue of 2011, this is the 4th of July issue, that he would be sad that the Constitution doesn't matter anymore. And that it's being shredded in our country. And we've got to do something about it. Boy, was I wrong. He says right here, Richard Stengel, managing editor of one of the biggest magazines in the world. Okay? One document under siege. And he's telling all of us that the Constitution is antiquated. That the Founding Fathers could have never known. And so what we were having today in our society, that we would have such a sophisticated society with skyscrapers. And then he lists all the things that the Founding Fathers couldn't have known about. So of course, the right to keep and bear arms couldn't apply today. Or the freedom of religion couldn't apply today. Or the freedom of the press, or freedom of speech, or cruel and unusual punishment couldn't be disallowed today, because of all these sophisticated things that we have through technology today. Or that the Fourth Amendment protections to search and seizure couldn't apply. Or that the 9th and 10th Amendment protections of state sovereignty couldn't apply now because of our sophisticated. Now look what he says. He lists some things here for us. Here are a few of the things the framers did not know about. Okay? World War II. Yeah, they couldn't have known about that. DNA. Sexting. Airplanes. The atom. Television. Medicare. Well, yeah. The Founding Fathers should have known about that one. The germ theory of disease. Boy, these guys got me. You can't argue with this guy, can you? He's Richard Stengel. He's the managing editor. You can't argue with him. Don't even try. It gets better. Okay? The internal combustion engine. Of course, the Fifth Amendment couldn't apply now, could it? The right to speedy trial, public trial, you can't get that when you have an internal combustion engine. What's the matter with you people? Antibiotics. Of course, the Constitution doesn't apply there, does it? Are you ready for the good ones? Lady Gaga. Folks, I don't make this up. I'm just the messenger, okay? It's here. I didn't make it up. He put that in here. The Constitution doesn't apply. The stupid Founding Fathers didn't know about Lady Gaga. It gets better. Mini skirts. Yeah. Mini skirts. Yeah. Yeah. The managing editor of Time magazine. Okay? He gets on CBS and NBC anytime he wants, and this guy's a pundit, he knows everything. The Constitution doesn't apply because of Lady Gaga. Skyscrapers, huge populations. You see, when you don't know anything about principles, and the principles of freedom as protected in the Constitution, and specifically the Bill of Rights, then of course you're not going to get any of that, are you? And he's asking all of us, do you think it really applies? Because we're so much more sophisticated. We've moved on. We don't need the principles of freedom that are guaranteed in our Constitution. That's the kind of trash we get in our country today. What is scarier to me is there's people that believe this stuff. That scares me. Richard Stengel doesn't scare me at all. He's an idiot. You know? But what scares me is that people would buy this and then vote accordingly. And that scares me. Okay, now, let's go back to our lesson book. Okay? Now, do you know what this is? This is a highlighted version of the Supreme Court victory that Sheriff Prince and I had when we sued the federal government to stop the Brady Bill. Now, all I wanted was to be sheriff in my hometown, in Arizona. I didn't run saying, you know what, vote for me and I'm going to sue the Clinton administration. I don't know why, but I'll find a reason. Okay? And so, no, I just wanted to be sheriff. Yeah, I ran on a constitutional platform and I said I'd keep my oath and I said we would protect people. I never imagined the things that would happen because of that. Man, oh man. You know, real quickly, we had a bridge wash out. If it rains in this flat area of Arizona, over 2 inches, maybe over an inch and 3/4, we're going to get flooded. Okay, that's all there is to it. And a bridge on the east part of town washed out, and the people in San Jose, this little area, had to drive 26 miles out of their way to get to their kids to a school that was only a half mile across the bridge. Okay, 26 miles now. The Army Corps of Engineers said, you can't fix the bridge. It's our bridge. A year later, we're still fighting with them to try to fix the bridge. Finally, the county commissioners voted unanimously, we're going to fix the bridge. Army Corps of Engineers come in and say, we're going to arrest you. They're going to arrest the county commissioners. And they're going to arrest the workers at the site. And so, I come in. And I said, if you interfere with this fixing the bridge, I'm going to arrest you. And I called in the head guys. I called them into my office. And I said, look, I'm really a nice guy. I'm a real peaceful, loving guy. I don't want any trouble. But you're not going to fine anybody. And you're not going to arrest anybody. And it'll be over my dead body. Okay? And we all shook hands. And we all left. And we didn't pay any fines. And we fixed the bridge. And the people were taken care of. And the Army Corps of Engineers, I guess, went back to Washington sucking their thumb or eating their popsicles or whatever they do when you kind of hurt their feelings. Okay? Big deal. Okay? Nobody was hurt. Nobody was hurt. Good. Okay? So then they come in and they tell us the BATF comes in and says the sheriffs have to work for us and do these background checks on people who want to buy a handgun. And they said, and you have to use all your department's budget and personnel, and you have to pay for it all, and there's no money, and if you don't do it, you're subject to arrest. So, and I'm not kidding on that either, so I want you to see the threat of arrest, page 4, right there in bold, page 4. It says, under separate provision of the Gun Control Act, any person who knowingly violates the section of the Gun Control Act amended by the Brady Bill shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for no more than 1 year, or both. So they threaten to arrest us if we don't go along. First time in United States history where sheriffs are being commandeered by the federal government under the threat of being arrested. Sound reasonable? 7 sheriffs joined this lawsuit. 7. Only 1 from Texas. What's wrong with that picture? 1 out of 254 sheriffs in Texas. 7 out of 3,100 nationally. Okay? And I want you to see a couple other things here. Page 2. Now, when I first filed, I was the only one in the country who had filed at the time. Sheriff Prince, about a month later, filed. And then Texas won, and then Louisiana won, and Mississippi won, and Vermont won, and Wyoming won. So 7 of us, okay? I was thrilled that the other sheriffs got involved. I thought I was going to be the Lone Ranger. But look at this statement up in bold on page 2, okay? Mack is thus forced to choose between keeping his oath or obeying the law. You see, what you want are sheriffs who know and understand when the government forces me to choose between my oath or a statute, which one do you want them to side with? Do you know which one they have to side with? They have to keep their oath. They have to follow the law, the supreme law of the land. They promised you. Why take the oath then if you're not going to keep it? You think it's going to be easy to keep it all the time? It's not. Especially with polymagicians. They're going to keep messing with you the whole time. And your job is to direct traffic. Okay? Do you know who said that? It was Judge John M. Roll. Because a year ago, on January 8th, in Tucson, Arizona, he was killed. He was the judge who put himself in the way of another bullet aimed at another human being, and he got shot through the heart. Judge John M. Roll during the assassination attempt on Congresswoman Giffords. He was the second one killed. He was the judge who heard my case. I was in his courtroom. This is the type of man he was. We lost one of the best judges in American history on that fateful day. And just so you know, in this book, there's a chapter dedicated to Judge John M. Rowe. The book is worth it for that alone. He is an amazing man. Okay? Now let's keep going. Page 5. In the New York decision that was reiterated in our court case, Mack versus U.S., look at that first bold statement on page 5. We have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Don't you wish your state legislature knew that? Because what we showed up here before showed what's the governor supposed to do. He's not subject to federal direction. Wait, now if this is true, we got a little problem here, don't we? If the state is not subject to federal direction, then that means your sheriff is, though. No, he's part of the political subdivision of the state, and Scalia actually talks about that and reiterates that in the decision. So your county commissions are then subject to federal direction. No, they're part of the state. Okay? So then the President of the United States, is he the federal government? Yes, he's the top executive federal government. Can he tell your governor or your sheriff or your county commissioners to do anything? Anything? No. Okay, how about, now this might be a hard one. I might mess you up on this one. The United States Congress, can they tell your governor, your sheriff, or your county commissioners what to do?
No.
No, they're federal. Very good. So if the federal government, okay, say the president, doesn't matter if it's George Washington himself, doesn't matter who the president is. The president can't tell your state or your county or your sheriff or legislatures what to do. The United States Congress can't tell you what to do. Well, then, how did the EPA get the authority?
Yeah, right.
Do you know that the EPA and the FDA and hundreds of others of bureaucracies in Washington, D.C. actually believe that their policies, not their laws, their policies, their regulations supersede your Bill of Rights? They believe it. And then we had some sheriff in Elkhart County, Indiana, that said, no, they don't. And the FDA came in to do spot inspections on the Amish farmer, and Sheriff Brad Rogers told them, if you come back here with no probable cause and no warrant duly signed by a judge, I'll arrest you for trespassing. When did that happen? A few months ago. Sheriff Rogers, you want to get to know him? He's on here. Because we had a lot of sheriffs talking at our convention. Because it was sheriffs who are already doing this, and the kind of Sheriff Christophers and the others that we have around here that are willing to put themselves in the way. It's called interposition. Why do you have to use those big words? Why don't you just say, put yourself in the way? I understand that. Interposition is a doctrine and a theory for parenting and for sheriffs and for anyone. Now, let me tell you where the theory and doctrine of interposition, I think, should have happened in American history. It was 1955, December 1st, Montgomery, Alabama. An American citizen got on a bus to go home after she was working as a seamstress. She's on the bus. She sits down. Then a white man gets on the bus. And the bus driver looks back at the bus of all the seats. And he sees that there's a black lady, an American citizen, sitting where he wanted the white guy to sit. There were seats available in the back. So the bus driver gets up and goes up to this lady and says, "Hey, move it. The white guy gets to sit there." And she had it. And she said no. A black guy next to her got up and went to the back. Rosa did not. The bus driver got real mad. "If you don't move, lady, I'm going to have you arrested." What? In America? Oh yeah, you know why? Because the state didn't have anybody directing traffic. There was no oath keeper there. And so the bus driver gets on his cell phone and calls, no, didn't get on his cell phone. He got on a payphone outside, calls the sheriff. A couple of deputies show up. And they handcuff her and haul her to jail. In America. Because it was the law. This wasn't just a tradition, folks. It was the law. You have to enforce all laws, no matter what you think of them. And what you want is someone directing the traffic who knows the difference. Someone who promised you in God's name that He would uphold, defend, protect, and preserve your Constitution, even if it means against other government. Okay? Now, what should have happened that day, December 1st, 1955? The sheriff is at the office when that call comes in. He hears it, and he says, "Give me Officer Smith. Give me Deputy Smith. I'll handle this one myself." And he goes to the bus, and he walks up to Rosa Parks, his deputy right behind him, and they go up to Rosa Parks and they said, "Ma'am, what seems to be the problem here?" And she looks up and she goes, "Why can't we just be left alone?" And the good sheriff is touched in his heart by that comment, and he sits down next to Mrs. Parks, and he says, "Mrs. Parks, you're right. And I'm going to make sure you are left alone. It would be an honor for my deputy and me to escort you home safely." And they take her home, and they make sure that her husband's shotgun is loaded just in case they need it that night. Okay? That is a constitutional sheriff. And that sheriff, did he enforce the law? That is a trick question. Did he enforce the law, my good friends?
Yes.
You better believe he did. The supreme law of the land, God's law, the oath law, His word. He did what was right. What did he do with the state statute? He put it in the trash where it belonged. And now, we can look back at history and say, "Oh yeah, if I was a cop back then, if I was a sheriff then, I wouldn't have arrested her. I would have made sure she got home." Then do it today. How about if they come for guns in your county? Are you going to let them take the guns? Oh, our government would never do that. Read the magic of gun control and you know they already have and they already want to. And do you know that the the guy in the White House today devised a subversive thing called Fast and Furious so that they could come up with a way to take away your guns? It backfired on them. And now it's the greatest scandal since the JFK assassination. And there it is. And they have lied and they have perjured themselves and they have committed all sorts of crimes to cover this up. And yet everybody's looking at this. Re-elect the hero that's in the White House because he's done such a great job. Okay? My dear friends, if he gets back in the White House, you are going to need this man and that man and this man and Sheriff Christopher. You are going to need them 10 times more when this guy is a lame duck than you've ever dreamed in your life. You have got to have these guys, and I don't care who the president is, I don't. But if this one gets back in, you better have a sheriff you can count on, depend on, and you better be ready to back him up, because he's going to need it. And folks, one little sign in and of itself that we are headed for such a catastrophe that would be almost, that is going to be impossible to recover from, and that is our national debt. It is irreparable. It is unfixable. You cannot do it with the way things are presently. And you know what our great government did? These same people that we're all re-electing did? They gave out $500 million in bonuses to government employees just 2 weeks ago. $500 million in bonuses. Why? Because they brought in extra money? Because the IRS confiscated more property, so they give them these extra bonuses? How absurd can we get? And yet they want to say that we're crazy. We're the ones crazy because we want what? Our Constitution respected, we want it obeyed, and we want it followed by the very people who promised to do just that. That's absolutely astonishing that we continue to support a government that does not support us, does not support our Constitution. It is the last line that we have. It is the last safety net that we have to hold on to. You've got to have people here locally that know and understand the threat to our freedom and Constitution. If you say that you would not have arrested Rosa Parks, then say that you won't do it today for Rosa Parks, the gun owner, or Rosa Parks, the Amish farmer who wishes to be left alone, or any farmer. I don't care if it's the atheist farmer who deals in raw milk. Oh no, not you raw milk criminals. I actually spoke at the Kentucky Sheriff's Association banquet. There's 116 counties there. This was a year ago. And I had an Amish buddy of mine who did raw milk nearby contact his friend that did raw milk in Louisville, and he brought me some raw milk, and I drank the raw milk in front of every sheriff in the state. Held it up high, and it was really raw milk. I drank raw milk in Wisconsin on the state capitol steps. I drank it in Las Vegas at our convention, didn't I, Sheriff? And I drank it in Washington State in front of public officials there. And the problem is, I hate milk. But I'll tell you what, and I don't know if it's psychosomatic because this is freedom milk.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's the best tasting milk I've ever had. It really is. It's a lot better tasting and a lot better for you than the store-bought milk.
Amen.
And the thing of it is, you know what, whether it is or not, it's my choice.
Right.
If I lived in a free country, I could actually drink milk from a cow without you burning it, and the government requires you to burn it. Not in my county. Won't happen. Because we've got people directing traffic that know and understand the principles of freedom and the pursuit of happiness that is supposed to be guaranteed by our Bill of Rights. Let me tell every one of you public officials, we're so glad you're here tonight. We need more of you. We need sheriffs who know the difference between keeping your word, following the Constitution, or standing on the side of tyrannical government. The choice is clear. You know, back during the War of 1812 and before all this started, with our problems with Great Britain, John Quincy Adams, the son of John Adams, was asked, can we really win? And a lot of us would like to just jump up and down and say, yes, I know we can, especially when you see meetings like this tonight, and when you see that there were almost 100 sheriffs that came to our Constitutional Sheriff Convention, and you hear these powerful messages and testimonies from these guys, you know there's hope. This book is written because there is hope. The County Sheriff of America's last hope. John Quincy Adams said 6 words, and I'll tell you the same 6 tonight. Duty is ours. Results are God's. Let's do our duty and leave the rest to Him. Thank you so much.